Hi, everyone. Welcome to my first in-studio podcast session with the best Canadian finance YouTuber, Kyle from Canadian Passive Investor. Hi, Kyle.
Appreciate you having me on, brother.
Thanks for setting this up. You reached out, and since we're both in the GTA, might as well do it in person. I have my timer. I have my questions. I'm just going to dive right into it if you don't mind. All right. I was on your YouTube channel. One of your recent videos said you just passed the $1 million mark on your portfolio investments. Can you talk me through how you got started? Have you always been in finance? Was it an educational background? Just talk me through your journey through financial independence.
Yeah, I appreciate it. My wife and I hustling through the expensive world of Toronto, I guess. But I'll roll back a little bit because the story to build up, I'm sure, like yourself, is very convoluted at best. But when I was a lot younger, I think my first job I ever had was like at McDonald's, but I grew up on a farm shoveling shit, stacking hay. My parents were very, if you want to buy something, you got to go out and get a job. So yeah, I worked at McDonald's for a couple of years, but I had this fixation on magic and kind of just entertainment industry because it kind of gave me a little bit more freedom to get out of this little town that I was living in. And then, yeah, I ended up just kind of building that into a full-time career. But there was a pivotal moment that I really want to specify because it literally changed my life. Because I took out a loan to start my business and get into the whole entertainment industry. And it was just really hard to pay off 20 grand. That's all I took out, but it took me like 2 years, which now it seems like nothing, but it took so long and so hard to pay it back. And I remember having a conversation with my mom that I wish I could just buy into someone else's business and just give them money and then own a piece of them and let them do all the hard work. And she's like, have you ever looked at the stock market? Changed my life overnight. I fell in love with the idea of it because there was no reliability in my job. I'm only as good as my next gig. So I ended up leaning into that pretty heavily. And then just things started to evolve from there. And I ended up, getting involved in some pretty good industries, found some good gains. And then come 2019, I started the YouTube channel. But as Compound works, I mean, if you just stick with it, right, it's kind of crazy how fast all of this evolves to be, where we're at today.
Yeah. So what age were you when you got the $20,000 loan? And it took you 2 years to pay it off?
Yeah, 19. I didn't go out to get a real education at a school. I was an idiot and I just used a line of credit to buy a bunch of magic tricks. It was probably the craziest thing my parents could ever support, considering they were farmers and had no idea what the hell their kid was doing, becoming a magician. But it worked. It really worked out. Hell, I did it for a decade before the pandemic. So
you didn't study in school. So I have a little bit of an advantage because I studied accounting and finance at York University. But how did you start learning? How did you feel comfortable in investing? Because it is intimidating at first.
Yeah, the privilege I did not have is the same thing that everyone has today is social media, right? Because back then, because I only paid that loan off when I was 21, 22-ish, and there was just no one to talk to except for my mother. And luckily she wasn't, she took the risk I took with some of these, we'll talk about it, but the MJ stocks we were buying and some of the crazy shit we were buying that worked out really well, but I was shocked she was even willing to back some of those trades. But it was fun with my mom kind of just bouncing it back and forth, but eventually just kind of got... there's no one to talk to. So you want to build that community out and started that YouTube channel, I think in 2019 after I hit a few big wins, which kind of led up to that, I guess.
Nice. So for your portfolio, do you do TFSA, RSP, or is it just like a margin or cash trading account?
It's a mix of a lot of stuff at this point. So obviously max TFSA, always max TFSA, RSP next. And then I got into corporate investing, which is like the final boss of Canadian or world finance, I guess, when you start figuring out how corporations work and write-offs and investing through that side of it.
So your own corporation then?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you do some individual stocks or ETFs?
Yeah, so it's a mix of both at this point. And I guess we can dive into some of the stocks that intrigue me the most right now, because I used to be all individual stocks. When I was a lot younger, I felt like I could afford the risk. And that risk greatly paid off. We got some substantial gains off Canopy Growth Corp in the MJ boom in 2018. That was the one that me and my mom caught super early. It was the first stock I ever bought. And then I ended up getting into Tesla in 2019, Apple super early on. My wife did exceptionally well because she ended up buying the bottom of the pandemic. She got into a lot of tech. But as our portfolios have evolved, once you start managing larger amounts of wealth, I just realized it's kind of becoming a little bit uncomfortable because I don't want to hold 30 or 40 stocks. And I felt like, when you start getting scale and money, owning 10 stocks just wasn't enough for it was too much for my risk tolerance at the time. So I realized instead of trying to manage all of this, let's narrow it down to mostly ETFs, and then we'll hand select companies that we think have potential against the market. So that way we don't have to manage more than half the portfolio. And I can talk about some of these stocks because they're really intriguing. We'll talk about the more riskier one and we'll kind of build into the ones people are more familiar with. But I have deep affection for small cap companies to some extent, which a lot of people don't because of the risk, and I get it. But most of my biggest gains have come from small cap companies. And there's one right now that I like a lot. It's called Aduro Clean Technologies, and they just basically have a technology to reconvert plastic back into oil in the simplest of sense. But it's crazy because like nobody even knows this technology exists, and over 90% of plastic you throw in the bin ends up in a landfill, regardless of cycling. And that little recycling thing you see on plastic bottles isn't always a recycling logo. Usually it's just it's the arrows with a number in it, and that number dictates what kind of plastic it is. But all these big companies, Waste Management, Waste Connection, you name it, even like Procter & Gamble, I think the next, probably the leader in the space from market cap potential is Pure Cycle, and they're, I think, mostly owned by Procter & Gamble, and they're building a facility now, and their stock started to blow up. But Aduro has much more malleability with their technology, so they can convert a lot more different forms of plastic, whereas their competitors are kind of stuck to a very clean, very refined version of plastic. So, and essentially the idea is you could literally take plastic out of the ocean, turn it back into oil, and make it profitable, which is, there's never been an incentive structure behind recycling in history.
Right.
Like we're talking about the changing of literally like, I know every major waste company is paying attention to it right now. Everyone, and nobody even knows it exists. So I'm like super excited for it, but obviously it's pre-revenue. They've got like, I think 10 clients that are all 40 billion, or not, they're test clients. They're testing out their technology at like scale for some of these guys and starting to figure out, hey, if this is going to work, let's use it. So they have 10 companies that are all $40 billion plus market caps, which really puts into perspective, like,
yeah. Sorry. So what do they turn the plastic into?
A reusable oil that can be reused for new plastics or whatever, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're working with oil companies too, because they can upgrade heavier fuels to lighter fuels. They have a few verticals, but obviously the plastic is probably one of the most intriguing. And again, they're doing a lot, and I don't think people understand. It's kind of blown up. The stock's up quite a little bit over the year, but it's just because they have so much interest from so many mega cap companies. And I think we're far past the point of vaporware, because I have some good friends that are engineers that went to their facilities, and they've kind of gone up and down it, and they're like, if this works out, like it's gonna be it's gonna change.
Yeah, I have been hearing about a few companies trying to do that, but like back to this specific one, what are they currently trading at? I'm guessing it's a penny stock.
Yeah, they're trading for about $250,000 market cap. They just uplisted on the Nasdaq. Actually, they just rang the bell, I think, on Friday. But that's kind of in the realm of small caps. But I like it because I feel more involved. I feel like you can get to know management better. Like it's nice seeing teams and people that have great passion behind real innovation, whereas it's not like just a money grab to these guys. I feel like they actually care, and they've been doing it for like a decade now, leading to these points. So I feel like they're kind of at this pivotal phase over the next couple of years. But that's Aduro. And then from the other spectrum, I think our two largest holdings are Google and Meta. Okay. Which I think people are slowly waking up to the reality of how big attention is. I don't know how Google's not the largest company on the planet. They have more, I think, net income at this point than Apple does. I think the only second company to their cash and receivables and just total like current assets is probably Berkshire, I think, because Berkshire's got what, 200 or 300 billion in cash. I think Google's sitting at something, and don't quote me on it, maybe like 170 billion with their receivables.
And they don't even pay a dividend?
Google pays a dividend though. Oh, okay. Google and Meta are paying. They're small. They're kind of insignificant.
Yeah, I guess I don't consider those dividend stocks. I didn't really.
But man, the margin on attention. Doesn't matter what product you're selling, you need the attention, right? And I look at the YouTube too is probably one of the most beautiful businesses on the planet, which is why I hate legacy media. Legacy media, and you look at like Crave or Netflix, I don't know why people like them so much when they have to pump so much money into content. Whereas like you look at the TikTok ban going on, like these are companies that produce zero content, yet are controlling the vast majority of media attention. And now they become the largest companies on the planet. And if you look at the numbers and the comparables, Google should realistically, if you believe in fundamentals, be larger than Apple. There's no company that has the same net income scale.
Right, but it's also tech companies are traded on future sales, right? More like perspective of growth.
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, if you're talking about Apple, I think there's a lot of bubblish territory we're living in today. If I've traded Tesla here and there, but I can't own it here. I can't. It's hard to own Apple here. We do own it because we try not to sell too much, but it's scaled down a bit. We try and scale our positions without, or by adding net new capital rather than selling, or trying to avoid selling as much like I used to, because I used to be a little bit more aggressive with my selling. But yeah, it just depends on your perspective on it, because Google and Meta trade at the lowest market or PEs compared to, I think, any S&P top 10 company right now.
Okay. And are they in the 20s?
Yeah, I think Google's around 25, if I had to guess. I think Meta's been approaching the 30s, but honestly, I don't know how, when you look at companies like Tesla, that, I think Tesla's got the combination of all the auto companies and probably Lyft and Uber, yet they make less, I think, revenue and net income than GM still. And I like that. Let that sink in for a moment, because you compare it to Google, that has a lot of incredible verticals, like the only company that actually has self-driving that's working today. They have huge potential in healthcare and genomics. They have obviously quantum computing, yet none of that gets priced in. Like, in my opinion, I feel like none of that, no one cares because it's not hype.
Yeah, and they don't have a weird CEO tweeting random things every now and then. But I think it's like, I don't know, it's more of like a tech company and innovation company. It's not, I don't really look at it as an automotive. I jumped on the bandwagon like 10 years ago. Tesla's one of my best returns. Yeah, I still hold it. They've split a few times. I've lost the shares a few times because I sell covered calls.
Yeah.
But people watching my channel, they could see my frustration with some of that. But for Apple, I've had it for, I think, 15 years. My friend started working at the Apple store in the Eaton Center. And then when they got shares as part of being employees, I was a little jealous. So then I bought at the same time. And I think I'm up like 500% just holding.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to sell, even though it's like 20% of my portfolio now, just one stock. It's hard for me to sell.
So you're really leveraging that one position, eh?
Yeah, because a lot of it I did. So my TFSA was already maxed, but I have like the S&P 500 in there.
Yeah.
And then my RSP was maxed with other stuff. So I own Apple at a 500% gain in my margin account. So if I sold, I would have this like $100,000 tax payable, which I'm not interested in.
Yeah, that's the tough part, right? Yeah, especially depending on what your income bracket is and all that. But yeah, I'm a stickler for scaling things properly, because I've had some losses. It's fun talking about the gains. Everyone talks about the gains, but I mean, I've had a few fun trades. I'm sure some of the OGs remember with Momentus, which was a space company. Had a lot of great board of directors, but one of them was Russian, and he was seeking asylum, and that stock went down real fast. What was really ironic too was one of the early stocks down, and one of my worst was GEO Group. It's a prison stock.
Oh,
I had a lot of faith in that back in the day, and I took a 50% loss on that, and now the stock's like well above where I would have bought it thanks to the Trump trade. But yeah, I've had some really bad ones, but that's always kind of put me on edge for like just being super cautious. And I always take profit when stocks go up a lot. I'll always kind of scale them down if they become too big in positioning. I kind of believe in like the Kevin O'Leary thing, where it's like no more than 5% should be in any individual position and no more than 20% in any sector. But I guess it's really depending on your risk tolerance, your age, your income. I mean, it's so hard to tell anyone how to invest, right?
It just changes so often. Like if a stock doubles over earnings, do you just sell it because now it's 10%, or how often do you do quarterly rebalances?
We're in a position now where like we're very fortunate to have the income level that we have. So it's like, again, I'm not, if like say a Duro went to the moon and it just somehow 4 or 5x over the next 1 or 2 years, because they start converting those clients, I would probably start scaling the position down. It just depends on how I'm going to feel at this point, because again, like in your situation, like I have really good income now. When back then I was a broke kid. I was working during the weekends, and then I had 5 days a week to like watch the markets and pay attention and do some trades here and there. But now it's just like, I don't want to put too much attention or detail into it. I'd rather just, hold these positions as long as I can if I think there's value to them. And then from there, like if it does balloon that much, like I'd force myself to sell it, because most of these are in our tax advantaged accounts anyways. Though the wife's a little bit more strong-headed than bullheaded than I am, because when I sold all my tech companies in 2022 when the market started to crash, because I was really, again, in that position where I didn't want to experience the loss or the volatility of it, because again, when you kind of finally get money and it's concentrated and the market starts to go down. So I thought I was a genius, because I sold Meta down when it dipped. I still took, I think, over 100% gain or whatever on it, and then I told the wife to sell it. She's like, no, I want to hold it. She rode that sucker all the way down, and then and all the way back up. Now she's just sitting here laughing at me, because she's like, I told you.
I think buy and hold is the strategy. It's hard to predict unless you can see like what Nancy Pelosi is doing. Like if she sells something, like I'm definitely selling it.
How is that fair?
I know.
I'll abbreviate a little bit, because I don't want to get too much into the insider trading, but because I work with a lot of private companies, I think we're having this conversation off camera. But I just find it so interesting that when I was setting up my corporation, and I told the bank advisor what I was doing, and I was like, oh, I'm always a little worried because I got to be careful because of insider trading. She's like, oh, why would you be worried? I said, what do you mean? She's like, well, who's going to care if you're doing it? I'm like, I don't know, the Canadian Security Exchange. And she's just like, oh, honestly, think about them as a big business and they only have X amount of budget to go after people. They're going to only go after big wins. They need headliners. And if you're only making a couple thousand, or she's like, no one's going to give a shit. I'm like, this is the bank advisor telling me this. I won't say what bank, but it kind of blew my mind that they were like even open to that idea. And then again, you look at politics and it's one of the most nefarious industries. You get Wolf of Wall Street, especially now with the pump and dumps and crypto coins. And like, there's so much insider trading. I don't know how government is allowed.
They should be banned, but they make the rules, so we can't really do anything. But as long as if she just like tells us her trades in advance, or just like within a few days, so I could copy what she's doing. She's the best trader of all time, so I just kind of
it's wild though, bro. Like you look at the stats on the political traders, and they're outperforming all hedge fund managers. I mean, you look at influencers like me, Kevin, that has been in the market every single day, overanalyzing shit, and still underperforms with his public ETF. You got Bill Ackman, an activist investor that literally underperformed the S&P last year. Like these guys you think would be like the best of the business, and even Buffett can barely beat the market today. Like he's struggling. Yet here you have
Nancy Pelosi doubled it. Yeah, she doubled
YOLOing options on NVIDIA when everyone's like, this is a bubble. Nothing makes sense. Well, clearly people knew what was going on and knew that they were driving a huge amount of business. So how did you know that? You must have been rubbing shoulders, right?
Yeah, it's different when you make the rules. But like, so just in 2025, how do you think politics will affect your portfolio or your trading? So we have Trudeau resigning and then potentially another election. How would that affect Canada? And we have potential 25% tariffs, which I don't think will happen. But we have potential tariffs on Canada.
Yeah, so the two funniest things. The first one is just the Trump coin, for any of those that have been following the meme coin pump and dumps, is absolutely hilarious that we have a president that is promoting a shit coin that is now worth as much as an S&P 500 company. See how that ends. But on the second scale of it, I think people in Canada are getting too caught up in the drama of it all because it's starting to dictate their trades. I don't think it kind of comes back to the point that Trump, Trudeau, it doesn't matter who it is, they're not showing up to your job. They're not supporting your family. They're not putting food on the table. Like I always feel like politics is just political theater. It's all noise. They all bullshit lie, say what they have to say to get in, and then 90% of what they say doesn't come into fruition anyways. Though I think it's fun to trade off of it. I'm kind of regretting not buying that shitcoin last night when it came out because we all knew it was going to move briefly. Could have just traded it overnight. I don't mind people doing stuff like that if they understand the risk. Again, I don't know how you can push it like that when it's so risky, but sure. But yeah, I don't know. I think the tariffs, I think it might be more of a negotiation tactic than anything else, because I think people need to kind of give themselves a bit of a backbone in the Canadian economy and just understand that like everything's globalized at this point. So like I always reference like Enbridge. Okay, so you're going to tax oil. I mean, I think 80 or 90% of Canadian oil goes straight to the U.S. Doesn't make any effing sense to tariff it. And then on top of that, okay, so you do tariff it. It doesn't matter. It's still got to go through pipelines. It's still going to go, all the oil drilled in the United States for the most part, all the Canadian oil, it's going to go through Enbridge's pipelines or like one of the majors, right? So it's just like the companies are so integrated. And Enbridge, you know, they've got huge utilities in the United States with natural gas. It's just political theater for negotiation tactics, I think, at best. But we'll see. Who the hell knows? It's a wild card, right? But you can't gamble on it. You can't speculate. I can't short it. I can't go long it. I don't know what it is or what it's going to be.
Yeah, I didn't do anything specific with it either. Like, I don't think the tariffs will hit, because then in the past, Canada just re-tariffed on other stuff. So we were kind of net neutral as a country, but 25% is too much. I don't think he'll do it. And then he might take over Canada anyway, so we might.
Oh, come on. We don't need to give Canada up that easy.
No, I just want, okay, maybe I'll cut
Can
this
we just
out.
recognize, though, Canada is one of the easiest countries? I wouldn't mind getting your perspective, too, because I know you're kind of a little bit U.S. cognizant, but I mean, Canada has so much benefit still over the United States when it comes to tax advantaged accounts, if people understand corporations. Like, I mean, everyone just like, we want the US dollar. I get it. Total currencies are collapsing because of interest rates and insanity. But still, like, I'm just shocked at how many Canadians are willing to throw the country under the bus to become part of the United States when we have the most commodities almost globally. Like, we have some of the best, like, you know, we're so forward in a lot of social things. The US just can't figure out whether it's abortion, gun rights, all this stuff that, like, we're so much more advanced on. I mean, I just love our TFSAs and our RSPs. Like, they don't even know we have that stuff.
Don't they have something similar? Like, they have the 401k and then the Roth IRA.
You can't pull them out. You don't. They're not like. I mean, we literally have an account that basically gives us like native status here. Like, I mean, it's crazy, right? Like, you can pull it out. It doesn't affect your tax bracket. It's tax-free income in perpetuity for the rest of your life.
It was the best thing I just want the amount we can deposit a little more. If it could be like 10,000 or 15,000 a year, I think I'd be pretty happy. But 7,000 is a little low. So I want to shelter more. It's my favorite account.
I think there's only a couple other countries that have similar accounts. I think some European countries do, but it's very far and few between where you get those kind of tax advantages. But I get people's concerns with rising prices. We have to pay HST if you're in Ontario, and like, so you're paying tax on the income you make, and then you're paying tax on the shit you're buying. But at the same time, it's like, well, start a sole proprietor, open a corporation. You don't even have to like do much for a business. You can say, I'm starting a social media site that's losing money, so I need to write off a percentage of my house, my food, my driving, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, like, your tax advantages change dramatically, right?
That's true. It's just not open to everyone. Like, I know, and we even have like increasing property taxes. Like, and you just bought a place recently. You just bought a condo in the GTA.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk me through why, when everyone is saying it's a bubble and it's going to crash?
So I don't think this comes back to the point of speculating on the future. For us, we were in a circumstance where, like, when I lost my job to the pandemic, like, we were ready to go out and rent. I didn't want to buy. I didn't want anything to do with home ownership at the time, because rent was so much more feasible. And when you start getting hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest, and you can make 10, 20%, whatever the market's giving you, and I've done exceptionally well, it just didn't seem logical to buy a property because my rate of return would have been so much higher than the cost of rent. And like I said, I have my fiance and she's working. Like, to contribute to that, it would have been nominal. But now we're in a position where, okay, like, we lost our job, shit got a little rocky for a bit, so let's just wait it out. And now all of a sudden, like, to rent what we were looking at that would have been like $2,600, you can't even get a basement apartment in the city for $2,500 or $2,600 a month. Like, it's really hard to get something decent or comfortable. So that's when we realized, okay, well, what are we going to do? We looked at moving to Alberta. We were this close to going there, but because we're older now, we have family, we were trying to see if we could make it work. And we just did a lot of due diligence. It's not like we made a decision and bought, like, we looked at new builds, and they wanted, I think it was $900,000 for 850 square feet plus $60,000 for parking. At that point, I'm like, I'm willing to leave. I'm not going to put $1 million into a box. I'm sorry. But then, yeah, it ended up finding a 30-year-old building, and it was just favorably priced. I mean, because we got it for just under $700 said and done, and it's 1,300 square feet, 2 bed, 2 bath, and people are like, oh, you're paying more for maintenance. I'm like, yeah, but for the same square footage, you've been paying over $1.5 million. And our HOA is only like $950, and that's all inclusive. So heat, hydro, security. The amenities are 10 times better than newer builds. Back in the day, they built stuff for comfort. Not like today. Today, they build it to sell it. But yeah, it was only because, like, we needed an affordable place to live. And because of the kind of money that we had, it made more sense, even with the higher interest rates, to put a larger deposit. Mm-hmm. And in the current market environment, it was easier to negotiate because there's no more bidding wars. So literally, after looking at probably over 100 properties over several months, like, the first one we were like, okay, this would work. Put an offer in, got it.
Nice. I like it. And it's 1,300 square feet. That's huge. That's like some semi-detached houses.
It's surprised. That's the thing, right? Like, it's kind of shocking at how much space it is for the price that we paid. And like, they've done a good job with the HOA. Like, we went up and down. I had a lawyer look through it just to make sure the property was well maintained and all that stuff for an older building. So, like, maintenance wouldn't go through the roof or anything. But it comes back to, like, I like what Dave Ramsey says. Like, if you're going to live somewhere long term, like, the problem, I get we're rental controlled here, and if you got it in early enough, like my uncles, like, they're retired and they're paying $1,800 a month for a condo downtown, and there's no point for them to buy. Mm-hmm. So in their circumstance, it makes sense to not just to rent. But for us, right, like, we're looking to live long term here, and if we can't afford it, we're going to leave. But at that point, you know, if we can make the more cost effective than paying $3,300 a month for rent, which is what these places rent for, you know, our cost at this point is like $2,200. So we're saving over $1,000 a month already. And once we pay it off, we're just paying maintenance and property tax, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's just long term, it makes more sense, because then, you know, yeah, we're going to see property tax go up a couple percent a year, whatever, but it's nothing like seeing a $3,300 bill go up 2 or 3% a year. So our costs will eventually be fixed and a lot lower, and we have more capital. And I don't consider it an investment. I don't really care what the price does. It's just a place for us to affordably live. Okay,
yeah, I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people are saying, like, hey, should I buy now? Should I wait for a year? And it's like, it doesn't matter what the price is doing. Like, people need to see it as a home instead of as an investment. People want to treat it like a stock when it's not. If you can live there long term, if you want to move every 2 years, like, I think renting is better, because, like, the costs eat away at your income. But I'm bullish on real estate. You know, I'm a part-time realtor. So, like,
are you bullish on the Toronto real estate market right now? Condos are coming up like crazy. There's like
I am. So short term, things are coming down because they're kicking out all the student visas. But over the long term, I am bullish, and it's where I made the most amount of money. I guess because I got lucky. Like, I got in 2011. You know what's funny? People told me in 2011 I was going to lose money. They're like, hey, it's a bubble, it's going to crash. In 2011, I bought my first house for $300,000. I know, and it's like, everyone's problem right now is that they weren't born 5 years earlier or something to get a little cheaper. But I don't know. I guess I'm just a little biased based on my experience. If you look over the long term, if you get a detached house, I think it's fine. If you get like a 300 square foot condo, no offense to anyone in the room who has 300 square foot condo.
Yeah, but that's kind of like New York, right? Like that's what I hate is people get like, the problem is people aren't very malleable, and we're moving back into a financial situation where people unfortunately have to be a little bit more savvy and a little bit more malleable. My cousins are going through this right now where they're going to have to move out of province. But I think it's an unfortunate thing, but I mean, you have to just wake up and stomach the financial reality that, hey, if we can't make the numbers work. And I'm one of those people that don't believe like 30% of your take home should be going to housing costs, because it's really hard to live if more than half your income is just going to housing, right? Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people are waking up to that reality now where it's like, hey, this is no different than New York. It's not, people keep thinking it's special, which I think is hilarious. They're like, oh, this is so unheard of. Why is it going up? So it's like, well, supply and demand. You have millions of people moving to this city, just like New York, San Francisco. You go to any city globally that gets that kind of demand, prices are going to skyrocket. That demand remains, and there's people willing there to buy it, and the government's not going to let it collapse because they keep extending mortgages. But the interesting thing too, right, is the Canadian stats are wild. Don't like almost half of all Canadians own their home?
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's 40 or something. It's like when I was going through the stats, it's wild. And the average Canadian homeowner is a millionaire. Yeah, which is crazy. So,
and it's going to get worse. Like, there's going to be two classes of people, like millionaires or like forever renters or millionaires. Like, I'm not saying this as like to gloat over people, but no one's building detached houses.
No, I think the easy days of like being able to work a medial job like my dad did in factories is gone. The days are over when you can move out when you're 18, go get a job somewhere that's just labor. Then again, I will say, the supply and demand. I don't know if people watch that South Park episode. It was probably like one of the best they've ever done. Was the where they got the college degree and then it's worthless because nobody wants to hire the college degree and they all need construction workers and they're all bidding, and then they're trying to trade their college degree work and they're standing on the side of like a Home Depot trying to trade the workers for like their college degree expertise. Like
I didn't see that one, but it sounds like reality.
It was on point because my dad works in construction and it's all old people. My dad's 70 years old and he does foundational work, jacking homes. I can't get over he still does it. It's keeping him healthy and young, but even he's just like, we can't find young people to do it. I'm like, you can get into plumbing, construction. I love meeting people that do weird jobs. I met people that run like morgues and I'm like, holy shit. And they just don't want to talk about it, but they make a shit ton of money. Wow, dump truck guys, HVAC guy. I just know guys that like, you just wouldn't suspect them to be loaded, but they're running like 12 HVAC trucks and they're making like over $1 million a year in revenue. I love people that find their way into that, but that's what you have to do now. Like, you have to be savvy. You got to go where the supply and demand mix-ups are. And luckily, the odd thing is the supply and demand mix-up is in very easy jobs to get. It's not like you need a degree. Like, you can go get paid to be like get into a lot of construction, right?
That's true.
Yeah, like you can be paid to be educated. So it's
Yeah. Like, I think when it comes to construction, I'm the most useless person. Like, I'm not handy at all.
I grew up on a farm, man. Shoveling shit, stacking hay. I'll just do what it takes. I'm glad that, I got into the entertainment industry because working for tips was very viable at a young age.
All right.
But, like, I don't care. If I need money, man. Sometimes you just got to smarten up. And, if you want to make real money, it's not like you have to do it for long either. That's the crazy thing about this financial stuff. I mean, like, you're in the same position, right? Like, we feel lucky, but we had to make the appropriate decisions to end up with that luck in the first place. So now we're in our 30s and we're probably, in the upper 10% or 5%. If in your circumstance, I wouldn't be surprised if you're in the upper 1%. I mean, but again, it doesn't take a lot compound, right? What is Einstein saying?
It's just a little bit of sacrifice. I go through some people reach out on my channel just asking for advice, and like, I'll look at their budget and what they're spending, and they have like a newer car than me. They go on more vacations than me, and they have like new phones. And it's like, they're asking how they'll be like, hey, I can never buy a house. But it's like, yeah, you're spending more than you earn. Like,
yeah, well, that's the two buckets, right? You have income and expense, and they're both controllable. And I, unfortunately, I'm like, I'm crazy. I'm over involved, I think, in my expenses and income. Not as much as I used to be, but like, I penny pinch everywhere. Like, because again, like, if you're young and you understand compound interest, right? Like, one Starbucks coffee might be worth like $5 to you, but when I look at buying Starbucks, I'm like, damn, I got 40 years ahead of me of investing, and that's $80 that I'm throwing down the drain every coffee I drink.
Yeah, but is that stressful though? Like, if you want to go on a vacation, are you saying, hey, no, I can't retire?
I will spend money traveling. Okay, I will say that I don't spend money on cars and like everything else. I'm very frugal. Even with buying the property we bought it very modestly. We could have bought something way crazier if we wanted to, but like, we're very modest modest in that sense. But when we travel, like, that's where, like, I mean, we dumped a sizable amount. I mean, like 5 figures into a trip we did last year when we did a cruise through the Mediterranean and then, went to Istanbul. And like, I'll spend money traveling because I've never regretted that. Like, I don't think anyone's traveled and said that was a waste of money. The experiences, the knowledge, the globalization, understanding how other economies work, like that value, that's invaluable. I mean,
oh, I love it. I did Japan last year, and I want to convert to Japanese, but I don't think that's.
They don't like they like tourists. They don't like the people that live there that are foreigners.
Yeah,
they're kind of racist in that aspect. It's kind of weird.
I don't know. They have a great society. I don't know. It's great.
They do. It's
there.
efficient, but it's very weird how they, like, if you move there and you're a foreigner, they don't like you. But if you come as a foreigner and you're just visiting, they love you.
It's great. I enjoyed it. Okay, so I think my video is going on a little too long. We're going to jump on to Kyle's channel. So I'm going to end it here. Thanks for watching, and tune into the next one.